Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. This morning in New York City at the Sony event, I got to go hands-on with the brand new Sony a7R Mark III. Now, if you haven't checked out my preview video, that's a video where I go over all of the specs. It's linked down below, or you can just search it up on YouTube and click on the video that has a picture of me on it. And before I get into the hands-on impressions, if you haven't downloaded my Gear Vault yet, please do it. Go to mygearvault.com. It's free. You can get it for iOS and Android. So first things first, let's talk about the speed of this camera. The fact that you can shoot 10 frames a second with a mechanical shutter, pushing 42.4 megapixel files through it is pretty insane, and it's the fastest full-frame mirrorless Sony camera in terms of a mechanical shutter. Now, it's not the fastest in terms of the electronic shutter because the A9 does 20 frames a second, but 10 frames a second at 42.4 megapixels is pretty darn insane. And one thing I noticed when pushing those 10 frames a second through the camera is how fast the autofocus system is. It's 2 times faster than the a7R II, at least that's what they tell me, because I never actually really shot with the a7R II, but this seemed super fast. I've used the A9, that's really fast. That has a larger area for getting focusing points. This one's a little smaller, but remember, this is more of a portrait, landscape. It's a direct competitor against the Nikon D850. But the autofocus capabilities are going to be great for people who want to shoot nature, as well as animals and birds and fish and all of those different types of things, because it's really fast for acquiring the subject. And what's great is when you're shooting those 10 frames a second, it's continuously focusing the entire time as you are shooting. So those are good things about this camera. Now, how does it feel in the hands? Well, it's a little more boxy than the A9. It's small, it's light, it feels like it's built pretty well, and they say that it's weather sealed, but I will tell you, it does feel awkward in the hands. It is more boxy, and my fingers were sticking off the bottom of this camera, and that's why I would need a grip on this camera. I'm a big fan of using grips, especially to shoot vertical, and especially now that Sony has the new Z battery so that you can get more shots on one battery than you could have done with the older type battery, but it does feel not super great in the hands. Now, some of you guys may get upset that I'm saying that, but it just doesn't feel as good as the A9. The A9 has a little bit more curves, and in this case, curves are better because it's easier to hold on to when you're shooting. Jumping back into the AF for a second, the IAF is incredible. When you're looking through the EVF, which is awesome at 3.7 million dots, it's the same as the Sony A9, you can watch as the eye locks onto your subject. As your subject spins, it reacquires the eye right where you need it to be. It's gonna focus on the closest eye. It's mind-blowing what you can do. And for portraiture, to be able to do continuous focus and not have to worry about recomposing when you lock in, recompose, or your subject moves, I'm always pressing the button halfway down because I want to make sure that I'm locked where I need to be locked. But imagine when you're shooting at f1.4 and you're getting the eye every time and it's tack sharp. That's what I think this camera is going to do, especially with the IAF. I love IAF. I love the fact that they added more touch functions to the touchscreen, including one where when your eye is up to the EVF, you can use your thumb on the LCD screen to move the focusing points. I've played with that on the Canon M5, and I love that feature and hope more camera companies add that. And another thing they added on this camera is a joystick. Well, they said don't call it a joystick, it's a multi-selector. It's a joystick for going up, up, down, down, left, right, BA, BA, select, start. But anyway, that's for Contra. It now has a joystick, which the A7 Mark II didn't have. They taped over the memory card slot, so I couldn't put a card in the camera, but there's now 2 cards in there. So obviously that's a great thing if you're gonna shoot RAW to both, but keep in mind with one of them being UHS-1 and the other being UHS-2, you're gonna have to wait for the UHS-1 to catch up to the speed of the UHS-2, which means it may slow down your shooting. And another thing they added that some of you may be really happy about is a USB-C connector, meaning you can shoot tethered, and being that it still has a micro connector, you can also shoot and charge while you're shooting, which is pretty cool. So again, this was a quick hands-on at the Sony event, but these are my first impressions. We will try to get this camera to do a real-world review on, and that's so that we can get it out of a test environment, run it through its paces, share the raw files with you, and then give you my final opinion on how it works in the real world. So again, if you haven't checked out the spec video or the preview video, go ahead and look for that right now up on the screen. Go download my Gear Vault. It's absolutely free, and I thank you guys for watching. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya.